Out tonight's meeting, we'll have two opportunities for public hearing this evening. We will take a short recess during this meeting and meet as a beer board. There will be a beer permit for our on-premise application. We'll have a public hearing. We'll have an additional public hearing during our traditional Board of Mayor and Aldermen meeting on a proposal for Carrefour, and that'll occur as item 11 on your agenda this evening. This evening, our invocation will be led by IT Director Tony Fisher. Our Pledge of Allegiance will be led by Alderman Yonda. Please rise.
Please bow your heads with me. Lord, we thank you for our city and all the great things that have happened in Germantown. We know that none of this would have happened without your mighty hand, and we look forward to what is to come and ask for your continued blessings. We pray for the items of city business being discussed here tonight. Guide our leaders to make decisions that would be pleasing to you. And as we enter into this holiday season, we ask for peace throughout our city. May we move forward with hope. May we move forward with faith. May we move forward with compassion, kindness, and love. We ask this in your holy name. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please be seated. That brings us to item number 4 on the agenda, setting the agenda. The board meets each Board of Mayor and Alderman meeting in executive session at 5:30. During that time, the board thoroughly reviews the agenda and the consent agenda. At that particular time, items B, C, D, E, F, and G were requested by Alderman Massey to be removed from the consent agenda and placed on the traditional agenda. Those items will be item B will be item 17, C will be item 18, D will be item 19, E will be item 20, F will be item 21, and G will be item 22. Are there any other adjustments or modifications to the agenda at this time? Is there a motion to approve the agenda as modified?
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion and a second. Please call the roll.
Alderman Barzizza?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Gibson?
Yes.
Alderman Massey?
Yes.
Alderman Owens?
Yes.
Alderman Yonda?
Yes.
Agenda has been set for this evening. Item 5 on the agenda, approval of the minutes from the meeting held on November 12th, 2018. There were no modifications or changes to the minutes during executive session. Are there any at this time? Is there a motion to approve the minutes as presented to the public?
Move to approve.
Is a motion?
Second.
Is a motion and a second. Please call the roll.
Vice Mayor Gibson?
Yes.
Alderman Massey?
Yes.
Alderman Owens?
Yes.
Alderman Yonda?
Yes.
Alderman Barzizza?
Yes.
Minutes have been approved. Takes us to item 6 on the agenda. We have 2 special recognition items this evening. The first will be Beautification Commission Business Award. Vice Mayor Gibson.
Thank you, Mayor. The purpose of this agenda item is to recognize Stone Creek Center, located at 9091 West Poplar Avenue in Germantown, as the recipient of the November Beautification Commission. If I could ask Mr. Jason Poley with Stonecrest Investments and Matt Cowan with Pew's Earthworks, and if I have any member of the Beautification Commission, if you could come forward as well. So it's just us. Welcome. Stone Creek Center is a prominent mixed-use retail and office development strategically located on the southwest corner of Poplar Avenue and Forest Hill Irene in Germantown. This property is managed by Jason Poley with Stonecrest Investment Company. Thank you, Mayor. Through dramatic architectural design and incorporating classical elements and contemporary features together, Stone Creek Center caters to shoppers, diners, and professional business executives from all over. Stone Creek Center is known for professionally installed and maintained landscapes. Each office building features an outdoor courtyard with a patio area and Forest Creek views for employee and guest enjoyment. Lush evergreen landscaping over the entire property is set against a natural wooded backdrop for year-round interest. The level of landscape detail, maintenance, and care of this Germantown property demonstrates pride in their appearance and their commitment to helping the city look beautiful. The Beautification Commission expressed much appreciation for their efforts. This property is beautifully maintained by Matt Cowan, Director of Sales and Marketing of Pew's Earthworks in Memphis, And again, we have Mr. Jason Poley, I believe, Managing Leasing Director of Stonecrest Investments. Thank you so much for your investment here in our city.
We'll say one thing. Everybody asks me about the property in McAllister's Deli and who's replacing them. We will have a very great concept coming in. I can't say who it is, but lease is signed. I'm going to let the owners of the business announce everything here. Should be in the next couple weeks. But it's going to be phenomenal. I'm so excited. It's a new concept. It's not here anywhere in Memphis.
Very
So,
exciting.
Yes, it is.
Thank you so much.
We share your excitement, and we also congratulate you for making sure that property looks regal in our community, and it brings great value to our community as well. So congratulations. Thank you.
Thanks very much.
Brings us to item B on special recognition this evening. Neshoba Junior High School, Shelby County Historical Marker. Our city historian, Andy Pouncey, will make that presentation this evening.
All right, we're good. All right, good evening. Tonight I put on my hat as the chairman of the Shelby County Historical Commission and come to you to talk about our second marker. Our first marker the Shelby County Commission brought to Germantown was Francis Wright. And this is our second. The Neshoba Alumni Association and the Shelby County Historical Commission erected and unveiled a historical marker on November 3rd of this year titled Neshoba Junior High School on property belonging to New Bethel Missionary Baptist Church. This is across from Germantown Regional History and Genealogy Center on Southern. And you see the marker on the screen here, and it's near where we recently voted and such. And it states, Neshoba Junior High School, land near the present church site was provided to New Bethel Missionary Baptist Church by Mrs. Florida Thompson, a member of a prominent white family of Germantown. The land was made available for a church structure known then as a brush arbor, where slaves could worship and learn to read and write. When these slaves became emancipated, this land was purchased for $200 from Mrs. Eliza Cornelius in 1869. In 1886, under the leadership of its first pastor, Reverend Isaac Cotton, Germantown School opened on a portion of the land. Philanthropist Julius Rosenwald of Chicago provided construction funds. The name was changed to Neshoba School in 1912. Renamed by 1917 as Neshoba Junior High School, it remained in operation until '69. Then it closed as a result of desegregation and consolidation of schools. The second side reads, during its years of operation, the school had many dedicated principals and educators who expressed the importance of education and knowledge to all students. Most of these students went on to become productive citizens, although living through the dark days of segregation. They moved forward in their lives knowing the early history of New Bethel Missionary Baptist Church, where worship and praise have continued. Praise continued into the 21st century under the leadership of Pastor Donald R. Esther, and due to the influence of these principals and educators, students were expected to succeed. Principals were Reverend Jack Bradley, Reverend R.H. Neville, Nicholas Watkins, J. Simmons, Henry Griner, B.J. Calvert, Mrs. Mary Bradford, and Mrs. Gazella Watkins Brown. So this was again erected by the Neshoba Alumni Association. And I have two members of that Neshoba Alumni Association here tonight. This is the President Charlie Martin, a class of '57, and this is John H. Moore, class of '55. Y'all like to say something?
We'll let John come and speak to us. Hello, everybody. John Moore. I want to thank Mr. Pouncey for having from the Election Commission of doing this project for us. But a lot of people didn't know that that school was there, but we have this monument there now. I also want to thank Mayor Paolosi for attending the ceremonies for that occasion. In '55, when the desegregation law was passed, that's when I left and they built Mount Pisgah as a high school. I really graduated in '57, but it only went to the 10th grade junior high. So during that period of time, Mr. Martin, he also went to school there. He's behind me. I'm older than he is. But I want to say that thanks so much to Mr. Pouncey for accepting this project, getting it through so that we could, where you vote up there, you'll see that marker now and know that's Neshoba Junior High School. And when he said Miss Mary Bradford is one of the persons, we are now standing on the ground of her property. And I live there where Huey's is. So thanks so much. Glad to come. Thank you so much, Mr. Pouncey. You too.
Thank you so much, gentlemen. I appreciate it personally, the invitation to be at the unveiling on the 3rd. I had a good time and met many of the alums as well. I think I met your entire family, sir. Yes, you've got a great family, and we do appreciate everything that you've done for our community. Thank you. Thank you, Historian Pouncey, as well. Thanks again. Brings us to item number 7 on the agenda this evening, Alderman Liaison Reports. We go from Alderman position 1 through 5. Alderman Barzizza.
Thank you, Mayor. I have nothing to report.
Thank you. Vice Mayor Gibson.
Thank you, Mayor. Would like to report for the Education Commission. We finished out the American Education Week where cookies were brought to all the schools, public, private, here in our community to honor those teachers who are busy working with children. The Education Commission is also preparing for the Battle of the Brains event, which is a STEM competition that will be held at Houston High School on February 2nd, 2019. Neighborhood Preservation will begin preparing for their tour of remodeled homes and landscapes in the spring after a very successful neighborhood summit just last month. Beautification Commission held their holiday tree lighting ceremony this past Friday. I'd like to thank Public Works, Parks and Recreation, and certainly the Beautification Commission members who served cider and helped throughout the day. But most of all, I would like to thank our Santa. He was exceptionally good that day. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Alderman Massey.
No report this week, Mayor. Thank you.
Alderman Owens.
Thanks, Mayor. The Design Review Commission meets tomorrow night, and the Parks and Recreation Commission did not meet this month, so I also have no report.
Thank you. Alderman Yonda.
No report.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And that concludes Alderman Liaison Reports for this evening. Takes us to item 8 on the agenda, Citizens to be Heard. Any sheets this evening? That takes us to item number 9 on the agenda, which will be in a moment a public hearing. We will now be in recess as the Board of Mayor and Aldermen, and now we will convene as the Germantown Beer Board. With that said, Mr. Lawton, a presentation, please, on public hearing, beer permit on-premise application Stacks Family LLC.
Thank you, Mayor and members of the board. The city has received a request from Stacks Family LLC for a permit to sell beer on-premise for on-premise consumption at Stacks Pancake Kitchen to be located at 7704 Poplar Avenue. As required by the city's ordinance, background check conducted by the city's police department is required along with the actual beer permit application on individuals with ownership interest in this company. Those background checks are attached to your agenda sheet along with the application. Also information regarding the zoning required for this type of establishment and the public notice that was placed in the paper. Based upon the background checks and the completion of the application, the administration recommends approval. And Mayor and Board, I do believe we have representatives from Stacks here this evening as well. There's a gentleman back there if the board has any questions.
Thank you, sir. You might want to just make your way to the front row in case the board calls on you here in a moment. Is there a motion to approve the request of Stacks Family LLC for a permit to sell beer for on-premise consumption at Stacks Pancake Kitchen located at 7704 Poplar Avenue? Is there a motion?
Move to approve.
The motion and a second. At this time, I'll open a public hearing. If there's anyone who would like to come forward and speak on this particular item before the beer board, would anyone like to come forward and speak on this permit for an application for on-site beer consumption? Please come forward. Third and final call. If there's anyone who'd like to come forward, please do so now. Seeing no one come forward, that concludes the public hearing. We return to having a motion on the table. Is there any questions for staff or the applicant? Alderman Barzizza.
Thank you, Mayor. Could the applicant come to the mic?
Please just state your name and address for the record. Make sure your green light is on.
Okay. My name is Bryce Bailey, 3491 Wind Garden Cove, Memphis, Tennessee, 38125.
Besides beer, are you going to be selling any other alcoholic beverages?
We're applying for our liquor by the drink license as we speak.
And are you getting all of your people tips trained?
Oh, yes, everybody that will serve alcohol in our restaurant will be licensed. We have an original location. We've been doing this for 3 years.
Okay.
We've got 40 years of management staff. We card everybody.
All right, thank you very much.
Any other questions for the applicant or for staff? Vice Mayor.
Just a comment, we are very excited to have you coming to our community.
We are,
We hear a
too.
lot of talk about new restaurants, and this is one that many folks are very excited about.
Thank you very much. Can't wait to get here.
Well stated. Any other questions? It's been motioned and properly seconded. Please call the roll.
Alderman Massey?
Yes.
Alderman Owens?
Yes.
Alderman Yonda?
Yes.
Alderman Barzizza?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Gibson?
Yes.
Well, I echo those sentiments. We welcome you to the community. We hope that you're very successful. Perhaps you can send me an email on a lager that you recommend for my pancakes.
Get up to get down coffee stout.
Thank you. All right, thank you. We appreciate it. That concludes our work as a beer board this evening. And now we reconvene as the Board of Mayor and Aldermen. That takes us to the consent agenda. As mentioned earlier, the consent agenda has been modified. I'll go ahead and read the items that remain on the consent agenda. Item A, Certificate of Compliance, Corks Wine and Spirits, located at 3078 Village Shops Drive. Item H, Donations, Neighborhood Preservation Commission. Item I, PEG Disbursement to Germantown Municipal School District, first quarter. Item J, Purchase City Hall Generator Repairs and Generator Rental. Item K, Purchase Employee Gift Cards. Item L, Purchase Network Switch Replacement. Item M, Purchase Phone System Servers. Item N, Purchase Police Vehicle Equipment. Item O, Purchase Rental of Traffic Barricades for the Holiday Parade. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda as modified?
Move to approve.
Second.
It's a motion and a second. Please call the roll.
Alderman Owens?
Yes.
Alderman Yonda?
Yes.
Alderman Barzizza?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Gibson?
Yes.
Alderman Massey?
Yes.
The modified consent agenda carries. We move to item number 11 on the agenda this evening. Item 11 is a public hearing, Resolution 18R23, Care for at the Gateway, Plan Development Outline Plan. Mr. Ross.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the board. This is Care for at the Gateway Plan Development Outline Plan, Resolution 18R23. And the request tonight is to approve the outline plan for the Care for at the Gateway Plan Development as recommended by the Planning Commission. The approximate location of Care for at the Gateway is at the corner of Poplar Avenue and Kirby Parkway in the Western Gateway key commercial area of the city. The project site straddles a T5 and a T6 district in the SMART Code. This was part of the SMART Code small area planning process that was begun in fall of 2013. And the zoning, the T5 and T6 zoning for this area, urban center and urban core districts, were approved by this BMA on November 2014. This application is in line with the recommendations as part of the small area plan. As you can see, this is the Care for site as it was originally concepted in the 2013 small area plan. They are filed as a plan development pursuant to the zoning code as well as the SMART code. They do seek approval of their outline plan as the first step to development. There are multiple steps on this project to follow, final plans for each phase. They do have this divided up into two parcels. Parcel 1, which will be the existing piece of the development that will remain, and then parcel 2, which will be the redevelopment portion that the applicant will go into as part of their presentation. This is their conceptual site plan that was provided as part of their application that was approved by the Planning Commission on October 2nd. As part of the T5 and T6 districts, a mix of uses is allowed, which includes residential, retail, commercial, and office. Just as a matter of explanation, the T5 district allows for up to 5-story buildings. 6 stories can be requested as part of a warrant. T6 district allows for up to 8 stories, and 10 stories can be requested as part of a warrant application. On Poplar Avenue, buildings must be placed a minimum of 10 feet back and a maximum of 40 feet back. Included within your agenda sheet was a summary of the development. It's on approximately 9 acres. They will have just over 400,000 square feet of office, just over 100,000 square feet of retail, and 240 hotel rooms, which are divided over 2 hotel spaces as part of their concept land use plan. All of this will be parked over 1,400 spaces, 1,200 of which will be in a structured parking, and another 135 will be in surface lots or in spaces that are in these open areas as part of their plan. This project does fulfill the Forward 2030 strategic objective of economic development policies encouraging investment in our key commercial areas. Approval of this outline plan is not going to immediately affect city staff as we move forward with the developer getting their final plans and preliminary plans and other design plans ready for our commissions. That's when the staff work will move forward. And subsequently after that, multiple steps will go through for each phase of the plan as it's heard at the Planning Commission and the Smart Code Review Committees. And then staff will begin the work of construction review for each phase. At this point, I'd like to turn it over to Nelson Cannon to give a brief presentation on the development as a whole. Pardon the transition.
I brought my IT guy back there. Nelson Cannon, 6685 Poplar Avenue, Suite 200, Germantown, Tennessee, 38138. Excited to be here in front of you all tonight. It's been a process for us, but we are here now finally. And before I jump into the project, I'd like to give you a little background about our organization and the history of the site. Cannon, Austin & Cannon has been and continues to be a local Germantown owner and developer. Started by Henry Cannon, Al Austin, and Bland Cannon in 1988. Cannon, Austin & Cannon just enjoyed its 30-year anniversary and continues to grow into new markets here in Germantown and around the Mid-South. The Kirby Woods Mall was originally developed and operating before I was born in 1973 with tenants such as Casual Corner, Wolf Brothers, and Joseph A. Banks. After nearly 15 years as an enclosed mall, tenants began to struggle and the original owners sold to the current ownership group in 1989. This ownership group had the foresight to demall the enclosed shopping center and opening it up and adding great activity makers like Borders, Macaroni Grill, and Swanky's to the existing tenant mix. This update was very successful until our last recession, which coupled with the continuing rise of e-commerce has altered the retail landscape, especially for the brick and mortar format. Our development team has been working with city and staff of Germantown since 2013 on this proposed project. We have had several, and let me stress the several part, variations of building layouts as well as uses through the 5 years. Even as late as early summer this year, we met with the Economic Development Board to discuss our project concepts at that time. But based on market and political conditions, we felt that the proposed outline plan tonight best fits the current conditions. I'd like now to introduce some of the team members that are here tonight. The team's head architect, Frank Butler with Fab Studios in Dallas, Texas. Lead civil engineer and my IT and movie maker, Robert Cochran with Alan Hoschel. And traffic and parking consultant, James Collins with Kimley Horn. We have had the good fortune to explore similar mixed-use projects and met with both owners and operators to see firsthand what characteristics successful ones have. One characteristic that stands out the most is location to us. Retail sites within office districts have more activity and support. Carrefour at the Gateway is a proven retail site that is surrounded by 9-story or higher Class A office that stays above 90% leased. It has Memphis on its north and south borders, but is fortunate to be in a peninsula of Germantown. Carrefour at the Gateway is unique in that it is bordered by 3 major roads as well as a large railroad right-of-way. The closest Germantown single-family home is over 3 football fields away. Another key component is connectivity. This not only refers to adjacent properties like Bank of Bartlett, Kirby Medical Buildings, Fogelman Properties, Westminster Townhomes, Trevure, and Fountain Square, but also surrounding neighborhoods. A successful project has to provide connectivity. Carrefour at the Gateway is doing that not only through physical means such as crosswalks, traffic lights, turn lanes, and future easements. It is also engaged in open communication with neighborhood heads and boards to get their input and feedback. Connectivity also has a lot to do with internal pedestrian flow, such as sidewalks, hardscape, sitting and gathering areas, and civic space. Carrefour at the Gateway has a 16,000 square foot program civic space that will have such activities as black and white movie night, ice skating, seasonal events, and live music, engaging and connecting not only properties but people. Carrefour at the Gateway is unique and is a first for the city and the citizens of Germantown in many ways. This is the first large-scale mixed-use infill redevelopment. Unlike predecessors, this site is an existing operational shopping center and has been since the early 1970s. Other sites have been greenfield sites dealing with trees, erosion, and more site grading. This development has had to navigate existing leases and infrastructure. It is also the first to propose mixed use in each of its planned buildings, not a multi-use site. This site is the first to develop under the T6 zoning. Under the T6 zoning, up to 10 stories is allowed by warrant and 8 stories by right. With the T5 and T6 zoning, the following general uses are allowed: residential, office, hotel, retail, and civic. Carrefour at the Gateway has proposed the following components based on those allowed uses. Approximately 100,000 square feet of retail, which about 30,000 is programmed to be restaurant, 430,000 square feet of Class A office, and 220 key boutique hotels, one being a limited service and one being more of a full-service concept. With all these uses and square footage, I realize that the citizens of Germantown are concerned about traffic. We have worked under the guidelines of the Western Gateway Traffic Study, but I'd like to bring up James Collins, who's our traffic consultant, to better explain how the risk redevelopment will affect existing traffic patterns.
Good evening. My name is James Collins of the Kimley Horn and Associates, 6750 Poplar Avenue, Suite 600. As you can see, the information that's up here, we conducted a traffic study for the city once the Western Gateway plan had been put in place to look at full development of the entire Western Gateway area. The study was conducted in 2016, and most of the information I'm going to present to you tonight is from that study. And this is the uses that were proposed for this particular piece of property as part of the Western Gateway study. You can see it was 315 dwelling units, multifamily residential, 175,000 square feet of retail, 140,000 square feet of office, 150 hotel rooms, and the total number of trips that would have been generated by that was 15,800. And after all those trips are internally captured within the site, which happens with multi-use developments, it would have resulted in about 10,500 additional trips on the roadway as a result of this development. What you see on the right-hand side there is what is proposed currently by the canons for this particular piece of property, with no multifamily residential, 100,000 square feet of retail, 443,000 square feet of office, and 240 hotel rooms. And as you can see, the number of total trips that are generated by those uses is about 2,000 less than what it was approved for under the Western Gateway plan. But because of the type of mix of uses that are here, the total number of trips that will be out on the roadway are a little bit higher. But it's about a 10% difference, which is well within the margin of error of the calculations that we do for things like this. So you can see that the number of trips that are essentially the same as what it would be under what was studied under the Western Gateway plan. And the ITE trip generation manual, which is what we use to look at developments like this, defines a multi-use development as typically a single real estate project that consists of two or more institutional transportation land use classifications between which trips can be made without using the off-site road system. What does that mean? Well, essentially what that means is that when you have trips that are generated within the site, some of those trips can use other uses that are within that property without getting out onto the public street, so those trips are internally captured within that site, which is a good thing. It keeps some of that traffic off the roadways. Excuse me. So this is typical of what we see of separated land uses, where you would have residential, office, and retail properties that would all be on separate blocks and have no interconnection between them. And if somebody were coming to the office development, they would do, as you see with this blue line, where they would come from off-site and leave off-site and never have any interaction with any of the other uses. If somebody were going to visit, if somebody was going to leave the residential property and go to the office space to go to work and come back home, you can see that that would add additional trips onto the public road system. If someone were to go from the residential property to the office and then go to the retail space maybe to get lunch or whatever, then come back to the residential, again, that would add more trips onto the roadway system. But with the internal capture that we get with a multi-use development like this, we can see that the trips some of the trips are still going to come from off-site. The majority of them will still come from off-site, but we're able to capture some percentage of those trips internal to the project and keep those trips from getting out onto the roadway system. So that's what that difference was in the table that I showed you between the 15,000 and the 10,000 trips and the 13,000, 11,000 trips. So that's where that comes from. One of the other questions that we were asked a lot during the development of the Western Gateway study, because one of two of the recommendations that were part of that study were to put in 2 new traffic signals once all the property out here was fully developed. And that includes not only this piece of property, but also Fountain Square and the medical office facilities that are on the east side of Kirby Parkway, as well as the Fogelman property and the Trevere property. So once all those are developed. So we took some drone video out here about a month ago to show what traffic is like on Poplar Avenue. And what you're seeing right here, this is the new gas station that Kroger's has just recently installed. The westernmost driveway for the Carrefour property is right here. And you can see that traffic backs up across where that driveway is regularly during the PM peak, and this is a PM peak hour. And as that cycle continues, you will see that traffic continues to back up across there. The back of this queue goes well beyond Aaron Brenner Drive. Sometimes it gets back almost to International Paper, and it continues to do like that through the entire rush hour. But there is a period of time during all that traffic where, even though it is still blocking this driveway for the eastbound traffic, there is very little traffic going in the westbound direction, as you can see. There's very little traffic there. So we would if we were to put a traffic signal at this location, we would take the opportunity to have that signal only turn red on Poplar when the people are already stopped on Poplar. So we'd have a gap there to stop them, let the traffic out so that we're not obstructing the traffic that is going westbound, and then turn it back green for Poplar before the traffic on Poplar would start to come. So we've also, as part of the Western Gateway study, we also did a traffic simulation to see how that would function. And if you watch the simulation and the drone video together, geeks like me study these things all the time, you would see that the drone video footage and the simulation footage match up very well. And you can see that the gaps that will occur when the Poplar Avenue traffic does stop going in the eastbound direction will allow us to have enough time to let the traffic out from this development and not interrupt the traffic that is going westbound on Poplar and causes little disruption. The people who are eastbound on Poplar have no additional waiting time because they're already stopped. So we're just providing a gap there in the traffic for the other people to get out, and then we let them go on. And you can see that's going on. I apologize for the jerkiness of this video. It's a problem with the software. It just doesn't show it very smoothly. In this particular case, you may be asking, what's that driveway right there? At the time that the Western Gateway study was done, the thought was that this driveway that goes into the apartment complex would also serve the commercial property to the east of that where Kroger's is. So there's a whole lot more traffic shown coming out of that driveway than what we actually expect to happen because Kroger's and that developer have chosen not to connect into that driveway at this point. So moving on to the Kirby side of the location, and I showed this diagram at the Planning Commission meeting. I think it thoroughly confused everybody who was there. So we have the same sort of situation on Kirby Parkway, and the drone video footage here will show you that there is a similar type of gap that occurs on Kirby. These two drone videos are taken on the same day at basically the same time. So this is between 5:15 and 5:45 in the afternoon. And as the traffic headed northbound on Poplar and northbound on Kirby and southbound on Kirby passes through the area, and it gets stopped on either side at Poplar and Poplar Pike, there's a gap that's created there that provides an opportunity to be able to allow people to get out of this development as well as the property across the street over here where the medical offices are, which is also planned to be connected to the Fogelman property eventually. That gives us an opportunity to put a signal there to let people out there without, again, disrupting traffic on Kirby. And you can see this is the time when we would have that signal operating. There's very little traffic going north and south on Kirby. We would delay that for just a few seconds and then allow it to continue to move on without providing any major disruption of that traffic. And once again, we did a simulation of that same sort of situation. This is the driveway right here that you see coming out of the Carrefour property. There's the medical office facilities. And when the traffic gets stopped there on Poplar, let that out, you'll see there's very little traffic going northbound and southbound. Now, we'll point out to you that the videos, the simulations that we have from the software are built off of full build out of everything on the site, including improvements that are eventually planned to be done at the intersection of Poplar and Kirby. There were some additional turn lanes that need to be added at some point in the future upon full build out. But you can see that the situation that was developed as part of the simulation is replicated with the actual drone video footage that we were able to gain recently.
I'd like now to show a short movie on the proposed redevelopment that may give kind of a feel of what kind of quality and sense of place, as well as hopefully answer some questions you may have. You can see the zoning overlays, the T4, T5, and T6 are phase 1 with that parking garage in the center. Phase 2 would be the hotel. Phase 3 is a mix of uses, hotel, office. This is going east down Poplar Avenue, passing Fountain Square to the right. The proposed new traffic light on Poplar. The one-story existing retail. We felt like keeping that open, providing a good view into the property. The signature office in phase 1, as well as the retail on the bottom, kind of a quasi-office retail on the second floor. Now you're going southbound on Kirby. All the curb cuts we've got are staying practically the same. There's the new light proposed on Kirby. That's the full-service hotel with retail on the bottom. You can see the garage in Phase 1 tucked back in there. Our commuter train. The Phase 3 garage, which we're hopefully screening very well for the Memphis neighbors. We've got a mini deck on top. Since it's a port in place, we're able to provide more of a mini deck on top. This is the green civic space with restaurants flanking the sides. You know, really trying to create more of an environment where people are it's gonna be active. We don't want it to be dark and quiet. The boutique hotel with retail at the bottom. Once again, that's probably gonna be more restaurant. Office, we were thinking more of a medical office. There's access right there back to the garage. Phase 3 signature office building, and then back out to Kirby. There's a Phase 1 garage. The neighborhood meeting on September 17th was just the beginning of interaction with the community. We have since been in contact with several of the surrounding neighborhood associations, as well as individual residential and commercial property owners, either through meetings, phone calls. Some of those have written letters of support that you'll find in the submittal package. Following approval of the outline plan, we will continue to work with the community to address their primary concerns as we submit further plans for review by the Planning Commission, Smart Code Review, Design Review Committee, and as well as the Mayor, Board, and Aldermen. This development is for the people of Germantown. It will only be successful if we listen to what they say and try to accommodate and work with an open dialogue back and forth. Thank you for allowing us to come before the board tonight and present what we think is not only a unique development, but a chance for this to be a catalyst for the community to come together and produce a district that Germantown can be proud of. Thank you again.
Thank you, Mr. Cannon. We appreciate your presentation this evening. Is there a motion to approve Resolution 18R23 for the Carrefour at the Gateway Plan Development Outline Plan?
So moved.
Is a motion?
Second.
It's a motion and a second. A motion is on the table. This time I'll open a public hearing on this particular application. At this time, if anyone would like to come forward and speak to this particular application, please do so now. As you make your way to the podium, just state your name, address, and zip code for the record. Is there anyone who would like to speak on this particular item in front of the Board of Mayor and Aldermen? Second call. Anyone who would like to come forward and speak? Third and final call. That concludes the public hearing this evening on this particular application. Again, it has been motioned and properly seconded. It's open for discussion right now of any staff member and or the applicant. Floor is open, board. Alderman Barzizza.
Yes, with Nelson, would you come up? Nelson, when we spoke back in the spring, I told you at that point in time that I liked the looks of the project. But one of the things that concerns me is buildings being right on top of Poplar. What's the distance from the curb to the edge of the building?
I believe the sidewalk was programmed at about 5 or 6 feet, and then we're 12 feet off the back of that, so about 17 to 18 feet. And kind of in relation, the buildings 6363 and 6401 Poplar, if you want to take like a look, those are 30 feet, and those were built back in, 70s. So, and the only thing in front of that is green grass. Just, that's for like a distance, just relation.
How much would you lose space-wise in area, overall area, if you were to back that up 30 feet, to 30 feet matching that other, on the east side as well as the north side?
That'd be more of an architectural issue with Frank. I'm not sure what that would do. I know we had to back it up once, and it kind of wreaked some havoc with 5 feet. So 30 feet, I don't know. That's a Frankism.
Frankism?
That's a Frankism.
Frank, you have no...
Please come forward, and if you come to the middle podium, just make sure the green light's on and state your name and address for the record, please.
Frank Butler,
3624 Milton Street, Dallas, Texas.
So would you have any idea as to how much it would affect the overall lay of the land, if you will, the interior area inside the building?
How much it would affect the
If you
architecture?
go back, yeah, if you go back,
It would-
it's
it would-
17 feet now. If you
Yeah, it
went
would
back another
greatly affect it.
12 feet.
The reason that it was there is the code required it to be no more than 20. They wanted, I mean, in the smart code, they request that the building be the proximity closer to Poplar, not farther back.
Well, I'm looking more at aesthetics, because, the people have said to me over the last year and a half, 2 years, that they would like to see less, a greater distance between the street and the buildings. And I'm wondering, how far can you max out? What's the distance when you can you go back 20 feet?
Well, I think we're at 17 right now, so
Right.
it's an additional 3 feet. That could probably be accommodated.
You're talking about an additional 20 feet or go back to 20 feet?
Go back to 20 feet.
Okay, 3 feet? I just don't know what that would accomplish visually, 3 feet. I guess when I talked to the neighborhood, some of the concerns that they had when I was talking to them was, well, the building was too close to the street. But when I asked them what about the building being too close to the street they didn't like, it wasn't the building, they said, well, maybe I wouldn't have a problem if it was more how it was landscaped. And then they brought up the safety issue, and I talked to them about the safety issue. I said, well, what's the concern of the safety issue? And they said, well, a car could drive off and drive right into the building. And in all my years in Memphis and Germantown, I can't think of a car that has driven into a building that wouldn't have driven into a building 40 feet back. You know, I mean, like somebody plows into a gas station or something like that. So
I have another
we can take a look at
I would
trying.
appreciate
Yeah,
it.
I knew that was one of the issues. So I'll
Yeah.
you know.
And would you get back to me on that, on 20
absolutely.
feet and beyond,
Yeah.
quite frankly? Okay, and I have another question in regards to the 434,722 square feet of office space. That's on how many floors?
You've got building in the front that's 8 stories, and then you've got flanked on each side that's 6. Those heights are 6, and then phase 3 has got 2 signature office buildings in the back, and then that comprises the office.
So that would be built out to suit the leasee?
Yes. Yeah, we wouldn't build those until at least 60% of that building was leased.
Now, once the moratorium is off on apartments, would that area be acceptable as apartment?
Well, we had looked at
Space.
the residential, I think a lot of people had seen our earlier plan where we had residential as a component of this project. And, I'm going to look at anything that's current or works with the market conditions at that time when we come in for a final.
So getting back to the office complex for just a second, approximately how many offices in your dream world, how many offices would you expect to have out of 434 square feet?
It all depends on the
4,000
office. It all
square
depends
feet.
on the office user. I mean, you could have somebody a large financial institution that makes it their headquarters. I mean, that you have a WeWork concept that we were looking at for the wings, which is more of small offices, more open conference rooms, almost like a coffee. They share community conference rooms and things like that.
Do you have any prospects? I know you can't mention who but do you have any prospects for a
Yes,
large?
well, this is one of the reasons we're pushing on this project. We've got office users that want to look at this site, and
can
they
you
won't
tell
look at
me
this.
which-
They won't look at the site until they know something's for real.
Can you tell me the one who would have the largest amount of area?
No, I couldn't tell you.
I'm not talking about who it is, but how much area?
I don't know.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Alderman. Any questions? Alderman Vice Mayor? Nope, okay.
Okay, Mayor, I do.
Alderman Massey.
So, Mr. Cannon, I appreciate your candor. I mean, I think you just said that if this goes forward, the market conditions dictate building apartments is what you're going to do.
I said residential.
Well, residential could be condos. That's a fair point. So we're still looking at the potential for multifamily here. And your father called me, and I talked to him briefly one day about the prospect of having multifamily at that location, and it being kind of a truly mixed-use, walkable community. Because the other question we have to ask as a community is, if we did this smart growth and it was sold to us as being important to have people living in the community and being able to walk from retail stores to other businesses, that's really the concept that makes smart growth work, right? And so if we take that element away, that permanent residential element away, it's no longer really a smart growth development. It's just a density issue. We're creating additional density. And I'm not saying this is a bad thing, Mr. Candidate. I just think it's fair for the public to realize what's going on. Let me keep going if you don't mind, and then I'll come back because I may have some other questions that you might resolve. And again, I'm not saying that any of these things are bad things. I'm just pointing out the reality of where we are today. Where I want to start, though, really, Mr. Cannon, is that the city announced this during a holiday week when most people weren't paying attention. And you and your family, I think, have made it their goal to involve the public, but there's a real question of whether or not we're doing that by announcing this the Wednesday before Thanksgiving and then having the meeting the Monday after the holiday weekend. And so one of the things that I would ask you is if you might go ahead and do the presentation tonight, let us ask our questions, but then also postpone the actual vote, allow us to postpone the vote, give the public a little additional time to look at your presentation, provide additional public comments, and then us come back and have this vote at some point in the future. The other thing we're dealing with is that we've just recently passed this apartment moratorium based on the idea that there are concerns about infrastructure, traffic, and other problems that could potentially be created by increasing density. While we may not have apartments that are contemplated today as part of this project, we are still increasing the density. We are still, as a city, being forced to pay, or the mayor's administration agreed to pay, $2 million to upgrade the sewer system to support the density. So we haven't really seen, we as aldermen, and I think the mayor's administration has seen some of these cost-benefit analysis, but I'm not sure that we as aldermen had, and we weren't included in those conversations that you and your family had with the mayor's administration. So there still exists with this project the question of whether or not the citizens of Germantown, for whom you say this is designed to benefit, if those citizens will actually see any benefit from the development. $2 million is a lot of taxpayer dollars. We don't know what other agreements and what other costs are going to be associated with this and other smart growth projects. So in my opinion, if we have a moratorium on new apartments in smart growth areas, it only makes, to allow time for the city to conduct a study on the effect, the impact of the density of those apartments, then it only makes sense that we allow time to conduct similar studies for this. Kimley Horn just said that the traffic study that was conducted for the Western Gateway was conducted in 2014. There's been some things that have changed since 2014. I don't know if you contemplated the new Poplar Corridor hotels that are going in just down the street. Perhaps it was, but those are all things I think that have changed. I don't know what stage of development Trevure was at when you first started meeting with the mayor's administration about the small area plan for the Western Gateway. So these are all some of my concerns. You know, it's hard for me to vote for an apartment moratorium or to vote to downzone the Cordova Triangle, for example, to promote less density, and then approve an outline plan. I realize that it's at a different location, but it's hard for me to downzone one smart growth property, and then say we're going to go forward with this smart growth project and continuing increasing the density without a true current cost-benefit analysis, a true current traffic analysis, to make me and make the residents feel comfortable with everything. And I'm not opposed to your project. I just want to know that it makes sense for us. And I want to know what the reality is going to be from the residential standpoint. What do you really want to do? Because I don't want you to make this decision and give a presentation based on what you think is good politically. We need to know what you think is really best for the people of Germantown. And I want to know that, and we need to be honest with them. That's really what they want. They've gotten to a point where...
I've been honest with them.
I think you have.
All the neighborhood meetings that I've been to, I don't want to be painted as somebody who has been dishonest. And I don't like, okay?
Yeah, and I haven't.
Continue.
I haven't painted. That's what I'm saying. I think you are straightforward, and I like that about you. And I think you can convey your message very well. And I want you to do it just like that, just straightforward, and let people know exactly what you want to do, what you think is best, without allowing any of the political message to interfere with what you think is best for the people of Germantown. I'm a straight shooter, too. And you'll find that about me. I think you'll like that about me, just like I like that fact about you.
Alderman Massey, do you have a question for the applicant?
Well, I think we've gone back and forth, and we've kind of established some groundwork. So what would you like to see as far as the apartments go, the residential aspect, the condos? Would you rather see that than a hotel? How have things changed? What did Mr. Ross say to you? Let Mr. Cannon answer.
So, Mr. Massey.
Let Mr. Cannon answer. Let Mr. Cannon answer.
Hold on.
I'm going to tell you what I told him.
Go ahead.
What I told Mr. Cannon.
Why can he not speak for himself?
Alderman Massey, please do not be argumentative. Go ahead, Mr. Ross.
Mr. Massey.
Mr. Cannon is an adult. He can speak for himself, and I want to hear what he has to say.
Well, you will in a moment. Mr. Ross, continue, please.
Mr. Massey, you have an application in front of you tonight. That was the only thing that I mentioned to Mr. Cannon, is this isn't about his future plans. It's about the application that's in front of you tonight. It was a simple reminder.
Go ahead. Cannons, if you'd like to speak, go ahead.
Yeah, my name is Henry Cannon, 6685 Poplar Avenue. You mentioned a postponement. I just want to make sure that all y'all know that we've been working on this since 2012. And we have worked back and forth with the city. We're running out of patience and time also. We've got an investment in this property. We've got frustrated lenders. We get frustrated owners. It's just, we've got to keep moving ahead. So I am not in favor of a postponement. As far as what we're trying to do with the property, we've come with different concepts to basically the staff, and we've tried to work with the conditions or restrictions that the city has put on the property. Some are good for us, some are not, you know, but we're working with what we're dealing with. If things change when we come in for a final plan, we're going to analyze that. Right now, we got to just deal with what we're putting, with what we have available to us. We know what the moratorium has said, no residential. So we're approaching this without the residential. And we're going to continue going down that route, trying to market the property and get this thing going. If something changes in 2 months, 10 months, whatever, when we go in for a phase, we'll analyze that. It could be that a month from now you say no more hotels. It could say you have no more office buildings. We don't know what we're going to be dealing with. So we'll have to address that when we come in for final plan for any of the uses.
Well, Mr. Cannon, when you and I first talked, it was around the time of the apartment moratorium, and you were not in favor of the apartment moratorium at the time. And I expressed to you that I didn't even know about your project. You said you'd been working on it with the mayor's administration. So perhaps you can explain to the people at home how those conversations took place from 2012 till you talked to me in 2017 about
I
the
have
farm-
no idea what you're talking about.
You-
I mean, you need to ask me a direct question.
Alderman Massey, that concludes your first 10 minutes.
Are we working on question and answer, or are we using our time here?
You have 10 minutes to have the floor. You're at 10, almost 11 minutes, so that concludes your remarks. You'll have a second round. Vice Mayor?
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Mr. Cannon, for coming forward. I do believe this is a dynamic mixed-use plan, and I'm pleased that the architect is here for me to be able to say it is a beautiful project. Another comment, as far as the area, and I don't know what y'all are calling it, but the area where FedEx is right now, where Swanky's is, that single-story area there, to be able to have that's at 30 feet back, to be able to have that as a window into the development. I think that's very smart. I appreciate that.
That's really about 60 feet back, excuse me.
60 feet back, thank you. So 60 feet back there. Gentlemen, I think what you've experienced tonight is that there are questions. I think that you have been forthcoming as far as what you are presenting to us tonight. The way our city works, and Mr. Ross, I see you in the back, as far as the process goes, when this does come back as a final, if something were to change, it still goes through the Planning Commission as well as the Board of Mayor and Aldermen. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am, that's correct. Any amendment to the uses that are included in the outline plan that you are hearing tonight would be included with any amendment to the outline plan as part of that process that would have to start over again at the Planning Commission. It's the same process that's been followed for any of the other plan developments that we've approved, including Thornwood and Trevier.
Thank you. I'm asking that question because there seems to be some confusion as far as how something would be slipped in, how something could come before the board in a quick way. It cannot. And so this is the outline plan. I will be voting in favor of this. I think that it meets the everything that we've asked for smart development to be for our city. And I thank you for bringing it to us.
Thank you.
Any other questions for staff or the applicant? Alderman Yonda?
This may be for Mr. Mills, or I think Mr. Ross can answer it. There seems to be a suggestion that the $2 million that we're doing in the sewer capital improvement is just for this particular project. It was my understanding, because I've been in part of the process for the last 6 years, that this was for the whole Western Gateway area, and that would benefit also the Poplar Estates area and other areas throughout the community that's closest to that sewer line. Is that correct?
Alderman Yonda, we discussed that this morning in anticipation of that question. I'm going to let Cameron and Bo jump in if my answer is not complete, but we've been looking at the addition and the capacity of the Western Gateway area ever since the small area plan was designed. This is not specifically for Care For. If that entire area is to develop to its fullest potential, the existing sewer that we have there does not meet the capacity for what needs to take place there. And if we do not extend the sewer line, then you're going to impact the residential area in an extreme way with all sorts of backups and things like that. So the system as is cannot accommodate that. The way the city has grown in terms of residential and economic growth and development in our residential and our commercial areas is because the city has extended the way most cities operate. If you want to have growth and development in your community, the necessary infrastructure to allow for that type of growth and development to occur. This is a planned growth initiative to extend sewer from that entire Western Gateway area down to the outfall along Wolf River Boulevard. Right. It's the way we've grown. And I guess the best example of that would be post-recession when Saddle Creek was developing. We took the initiative to extend sewer line from the central business district through the Fulmer property down to Wolf River Boulevard, where we had capacity for the sewer to go. The funding from this is not coming out of tax dollars, it's coming out of our utility fund, which is fully funded. And as a matter of fact, by the end of this year, we'll be debt-free because of the way we've managed the fund. But economic development growth truly does not happen, whether it's residential or commercial, without the city stepping in and extending those necessary infrastructure items, such as sewer.
Follow up or?
Just to add on, I think it's being a little oversimplified to say that we haven't studied this area. We had the small area plan in 2013. We had follow-up sewer basin study, which includes more than the 58 acres of the Western Gateway. It does include the entire basin, which has portions of the residential area, Oak Run, Brookside, Poplar Estates, those types of things. That was done in 2016, and the traffic model was created in 2016 that Mr. Collins alluded to earlier. That traffic model is a living, breathing thing. It's not just a capture in time. It is synced up with the Central Business District traffic model, which has projects added onto it every time something is done. So the question about Trevere being part of it, Trevere is part of that model. Other things in our Central Business District are part of that model. The medical corridor and improvements in the medical corridor are also part of that traffic model. It's a comprehensive traffic model for our key commercial areas, and it's how we perform these high-level analysis to make sure that a project is a best fit. And if not, other infrastructure has to be developed or the project has to be scaled down. And that's the give and take that goes on with developers when they come into the Office of Economic and Community Development. And I'll say it once and I'll say it 1,000 times to all 6 of you. Our office is open for you to come in and ask these questions, go over these studies and these projects, and ask questions about potential projects that may or may not have hit your desk already. It's not necessarily that we don't tell you everything, we don't project everything, but we are open and we are available to go over studies that may have even happened before you got on the board, and available all the time to do that.
The sewer is a good example. The candidates did not come forward to the administration or to Economic and Community Development, said we need a $2 million sewer system. This was identified well in advance. I see Alan Hochul, Representative Mr. Ben Pearson here, in terms of what that Western Gateway area was needed to expand and to grow. And that $2 million sewer line was identified at that period of time, not as a part of this project, but moreover for the entire Western Area Gateway. And we have approved, you have identified that in the 5-year capital improvement budget that was adopted by this body.
Thank you, Mr. Lawton. Mr. Mills, that sewer line probably has a shelf life of 50 to 70 years approximately?
Yes, that's correct.
Yes, so
And it was
depreciated
put
over
in the
50
60s.
years would be $40,000 a year, roughly. And I think the survey, the traffic survey and the write-ups was done in 2017. Is that correct? 16. Yeah, 16. Well, you had 17 in your write-up. Alderman Yonda, any other questions?
We also are talking about impact fees in the future, but most of that area is commercial. They pay at a higher tax rate, so they're taxpayers also. But it's probably something for the future on impact fees.
Any type of discussion along those lines, Alderman Yonda, when we present the work that Mr. Heisman and company are doing on the moratorium study, right, that will be the time to address impact fees, if at all, but we'll be prepared to address that with you.
Okay, thank
Mayor,
you.
if I could, one other comment about
Sure,
the notice for this meeting this evening. The zoning ordinance requires that in these type of developments that are coming forward, outline plans, that the city notify the public way in advance of the meeting. This just didn't go out in the packet on last Wednesday when we absolutely normally delivered the packets to our elected officials. The public hearing notice for this specific development before you this evening was actually posted in the Germantown News on November 7th. So there's been adequate public notice given when this public hearing would take place. The packets were delivered last Wednesday, as we normally do, at least a week prior to a board meeting.
I'd like to conclude and say that I realize that this is just an outline plan and it has no residential, and that will be what I'll be voting for. Okay?
Thank you, Alderman. Any other questions for staff or the applicant? Alderman Owens.
Just to make some general comments, thank you, Mayor. It's no surprise I voted for this at the Planning Commission level, and I'll be voting for it again tonight. I am excited about the opportunity that we've got before us. I appreciate you guys being willing to move forward with this process, and you have been patient, and your zoning is in place. And I think we're going to have an evolution of the property, which allows us to be, this property to be a cutting-edge property. It'll be cutting-edge in terms of retail, in terms of office development. It'll also contribute greatly, in my opinion, to the quality of life of our residents. I think the location is a proven retail site. It's adjacent to Memphis, where if it's developed properly and in a manner consistent with the Western Gateway, which this outlined plan is, it allows Germantown to reap the considerable tax revenue benefits from both Memphis and Germantown residents. I think that the civic space will be very special. It'll be vibrant. It'll be important gathering space for our residents to enjoy. I love the vision that you've got for that, and I think that really sort of brings it full circle in terms of making it what we envisioned as part of a smart youth, smart growth project. Just a couple more comments. The traffic, thank you, James, for meeting with me. We sat down a considerable amount of time and went over the studies that you have, the models that you have. I understand it much better now because, as I mentioned at the Planning Commission, I mean, I think from a common sense standpoint, it's almost like you have some questions about putting a signal in that short span of from Poplar to Poplar Pike, but your model does a great job of illustrating that gap and how that a traffic signal could be serviced there. And of course, that'll have to be warranted at such time when we get the proper traffic counts. But I think that the simulation does show that there's no major disruptions. The only other comment I guess I would make at this point, and I'd say this, I mean this sincerely, respectfully, Alderman Barziza, I just have a little bit of an opposite take, and I've heard some of the same comments that you heard, but I've also heard other people who've said they like seeing a building that addresses the street, if you will, and has architectural showcase piece in a certain area, and would rather see that and a streetscape plan and a well-designed landscape area up adjacent to the street than see a sea of parking that we do have in some of our older developments here. And so I like the look. It is more of an urban look, I will admit, but I think it's certainly appropriate in this particular area of the city.
Thank you, Alderman. Any other questions for staff?
Sure, Mayor.
Alderman Massey.
So I do want everyone, you too, Mr. Cannon, you and I talked about this. Mr. Ross says that anyone can walk into his office and get any information that we want, but I had to submit a public information request for all the documents relevant to this development. At the time, the mayor said he wouldn't give them to me because he said there was nothing on the Planning Commission agenda. But you've told us
well,
that...
Mr. Alderman Massey, you didn't ask me anything personally, so please don't make that statement.
No, Mayor, I did. It was actually in one of these meetings, so yeah, I did.
You did not ask me for
It's your staff, and you've said specifically that you control your staff. So yeah, the buck stops with you.
It does stop with me. You did
Well,
not
then
ask
start
me about
taking responsibility for it then.
Point of order.
Yeah, can we get back to what we're supposed to be doing here?
Well, that's what I'm trying to do.
Well, it doesn't sound like it to me.
Please,
Sorry,
Alderman.
Mayor.
Yeah. Please make your statement or ask your question.
So, Mr. Cannon, I've been trying to get information about this project since I found out about it, since you first contacted me. The mayor's administration won't release that information, okay? With other projects, they've withheld documents, they've redacted documents. There's no way for me to make an informed decision about what's going to go on in this and other smart growth projects if they're concealing information from me, okay? And so that's the other reason I wanted this postponed tonight, because we as a board need the mayor's administration to finally produce the information, the public information that has been requested, so we can know exactly what business was conducted with all the developers. That's not saying that you've done anything wrong. It's saying that the public deserves to know what their city officials were doing behind closed doors, to the exclusion of their other elected representatives, namely me and some of the other.
Do you have a question for the applicant or staff?
Yeah, I do. And Mr. Ross, you can come back to me, but the mayor, you're not going to monopolize my time. So let me get through, and then if he wants to give you more time, he can. As far as the sewer project goes, the utility fund is still something that's funded by the residents of Germantown. They don't call it, they say that it's not your tax money, but it's still your utility fund. It's still money that you pay in for utility fees. And the reality is, while it may not be specifically for Carrefour, it was designed to support the density of the Western Gateway. And the Carrefour project is part of the Western Gateway. That's just reality. And it's fair for the people at home to know that. And it's fair for us as aldermen to question why the mayor's administration entered into this public-private agreement to use the utility funds to pay for that without asking for an impact fee. Now they're saying that we're going to conduct.
Alderman, ask the question of the applicant or staff. We have not presented anything as it relates to the utility fund for this project. It's in the CIP. The board will look at it eventually. Continue, please. Ask your
Mayor,
question.
we have voted on the $2 million for the sewer expansion.
That is not correct. You are misinformed.
It was in the CIP,
No,
Patrick.
we voted on it, but you have to look at a contract, Alderman Massey. The staff will not go out and execute a contract without bringing it to this body first. So you saying that it's been approved by the mayor's administration is not accurate.
Well, it's an agreement you made as part of
No,
this
no,
bill.
we did not make an agreement with the
You're
candidates.
on the recording saying that.
Well,
so,
I'd love to hear it.
well,
I'd love to hear
I'd
it.
let you hear it.
Alderman Massey, you have the floor. Please ask a question.
Well, if y'all stop interrupting me and let me carry on my conversation,
Well,
I'll do that.
you're misleading the public, so you need to be corrected. Go ahead.
How am I misleading the public?
Well,
And
you're not getting,
put
you're
this
not
on my
getting the
time
information. It's part of your time. Ask a question of staff or the applicant.
Mr. Ross, you said that if any amendment to the use would come before the board, any amendment to the use would have to come before the board. But there's no need to change the use because the use is already approved. I mean, the multifamily use is already part of T5 and T6, so there's no need to amend that use because the multifamily is already included as one of the uses in those smart growth zones. So,
Mr. Massey, the application in front of you is for 434,722 square feet of office.
you're confusing the public with that.
No, sir, I believe you're
Well,
confusing the
Mr. Massey,
public.
just asked staff a question.
No, I didn't ask
Yes,
staff.
you did,
I
you
made a
did.
comment to staff.
Mr. Ross?
So, Mr. Cannon, if you could
Mr.
explain
Massey, hold on a moment,
how
please. Mr. Massey.
we got to this point.
Mr. Massey, hold on for a moment,
I don't
please.
want him taking my time.
I will
Mayor.
be,
You
I
are
will,
monopolizing my time.
I will be lenient with your time. So you asked about whether or not this was already there's no need to come back. So yeah, any change to this plan would require going through the planning, this was already mentioned earlier in this meeting, would have to go through the planning commission and come back to this group. So did I answer that correctly on behalf of the administration?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Continue with your question, Mr. Cannon, if you need to come forward.
Before Mr. Massey starts again, and not to monopolize his time, but part of the process is education of developers, educating the developers on the plans that we have, the sewer plans that we have, the traffic plans that we have, the small area plans that we have in our zoning code. That's what our meetings have been about, in trying to work together to create a plan that meets those needs and those plans. We work on those plans, these plans that were approved by resolution by this board, implemented by ordinance by this board into the SMART code for that enabling legislation, for us to have these discussions on designing the appropriate types of developments for these spaces. It is an education process. It's not anything that is untoward or something that you can make accusations towards staff about having inappropriate meetings with developers. What we're doing is perfectly allowed under the Tennessee Annotated Code, as well as the charter of the city and the zoning code. It is a perfectly acceptable way to conduct business in our city, to make sure that we are carrying out the small area plans and the strategic objectives of this city. And that's what we're meeting about.
Well, Mr. Ross, that's fine. My problem was with the mayor's administration concealing and withholding and redacting information from me. You may not have played a role in that, but they did, and it was wrong. So thank you.
Mr.
Now,
Massey,
Mr. Ross?
Let's get back to the business. So maybe you can explain to the public how all of this came about, how your conversations began with the mayor's administration in 2012 and progressed from there.
I wasn't the mayor in 2012, so Mayor Goldsworthy's administration.
Well, that's not it. The mayor that was,
Can we get back to the point here?
Mr. Cannon, I guess you have an open-ended question. If you'd like to answer it, go ahead.
Be more specific, please.
at what point did you, if you want to stick to this mayor's administration, we can do that. So when did the conversations begin about redeveloping Carrefour with this mayor's administration?
Well, it's kind of hard not to include the other administration because it all started in 2012.
Well, that's fine.
So, I mean, it started with everybody pitching in together and trying to come up with a plan and work together with the city and with all the people, the citizens. We finally, I forgot the name of the group now, but the
Lawrence Group.
Lawrence Group had come up with a plan that the city was happy with, that we were looking at, that we were questioning a little bit, but we moved forward. It was vetted with the citizens of Germantown at the time. It was vetted with all the business leaders, and we spent many months with everybody. It wasn't just developers, and it wasn't just the city, it was everybody. But excuse me, let me finish. So we all had to put our 2 bits worth in, so to speak, to come up with a plan that the city would approve. And I think that's kind of how the whole thing started. Now, when you get to the current administration, and I don't know where you draw the line, to be honest with you, because we had started, when did you get in? 2014 was the new administration. So in 2013, I believe we'd already hired the architect and we're starting to work through the process of coming up with a site plan that met the criteria of the smart growth plan. And we went through many, many different drawings and finally started coming up with something that was getting closer and closer to working. And I think it probably wasn't until the middle of 15, this goes back a while, middle of 15 or beginning of 15, did we have a plan that looked, that we were pleased with. And Frank did worked really hard trying to come up with many plans. And then we hired several other consultants, and we met with staff at that time. And
who was the staff that you were meeting with?
Cameron was there. The Public Works were there. I think the fire department was there. So we kind of went through a pre-sketch plan at that time. And we were looking at that again, trying to push this thing forward because we knew that the center of the retail had changed dramatically. So we were trying to move ahead as quick as we could with this other concept. And that's basically where we've been. We just keep running into one little roadblock or challenge after another. We try to get through it. Luckily, we have gotten through the challenges, and maybe it's made it a better project. Don't know yet. But that's where we are today.
Well, and all of this relates back to some of the conversations that you and I had by email, and your comments about not wanting to be a part of the moratorium and the conversations you had had with the mayor's administration after 2014 present regarding what your vision was for the development of that property. And so I'm just trying to get a feel of how we got to where we are today, who made the decisions, who were the people that were behind the scenes creating this sewer expansion and these public-private agreements. What other public-private agreements exist that we don't know about? And these are the...
What public-private agreement are you talking about?
In one of our meetings when we were discussing the sewer expansion, the aldermen here on the board each agreed that we should have impact fees so that.
Excuse me, I wasn't involved in that.
No, sir, I didn't say you
Okay,
were.
so there is no private, it's public.
Okay, but this is what city administrator referred to it as. So we were discussing the.
That is not true.
I've got it on recording, so I'll play it for you. That's fine.
Can we get back to the point?
Well, if the.
You have,
Point of
you have
order?
about a minute
Point of
left. You're at
information?
about 13 minutes. and
I'm
giving you-
answering his question, so.
I'm letting you know what your time limit is.
Thank you,
Continue.
Mayor. So at this meeting, each of the aldermen discussed the need for us to have the impact fees, and the sewer expansion was specifically brought up. And so the conversation was addressed then to the mayor's administration, and the city administrator specifically said that the sewer expansion was part of a public-private partnership and that the city would incur all of those costs. And each of us on this board expressed concerns about that. So that's how that public-private conversation came up. And I'm wanting to know what other public-private agreements and partnerships exist as they relate to this project. And I think it's a fair question on behalf of the public.
What
There
is the
are
question?
none. There are no public-private agreements, partnerships between the city of Germantown and Cannon. The way Mr. Cannon rather, described the process for development to occur in this community in terms of he, the developer, any other developer, the good people in this community coming forward to meet with the administration, to work with community development, to get an idea of what's allowable. That's how it's happened. That's 40 years of growth in this community. There is no, again, I've used this before, words matter. Alderman Massey, when you make accusations about public-private partnerships and closed-door deals, that's simply not true, and you have to
Point
acknowledge
of order,
that.
Mayor.
In
I
terms-
had the
in
floor
terms
and your
of-
staff interrupted me.
That's fine. They can answer you.
Well,
Mr. Cannon has not
they
gotten
shouldn't
a
interrupt
chance.
me.
They can, though. Mr. Cannon, you didn't get a chance to answer that question on the public-private partnership on your application.
I don't know what you're talking about. Again, I have never been involved in a conversation. I have no agreements. I'm trying to get an agreement.
Yeah.
And it's not very easy.
So, and I'm not saying you know anything about them necessarily. I'm just trying to find out if there are something.
You just asked me a question, I just answered it.
That you're at.
I can't answer anything else.
What did I misphrase
You
something?
asked me, was I involved in any any other public-private agreements?
Well, I think no, I said, are you involved in anything
Okay, I'm
other than
not.
the sewer expansion? So
I'm
what I'm
not-
wanting to
I'm not
know
involved
is
in
if
any
there's
of it.
something that we don't know about. Because the mayor's administration won't tell me. That's all I was
I
saying.
think he just answered your question three
He did?
times. That concludes your comments. You're at 15 minutes. Anyone else would like the floor on this particular item? It's been Alderman Owens.
Go ahead, Alderman.
Alderman Barzis.
I just want to mention in the planning commission minutes on page 41, we got to remember to strike item 1 that has a relationship with Gardenia as well as Viridian.
Thank you. We're taking care of that at the planning commission level minutes and duly noted as well. Thank you, Alderman. All right, it's been properly motioned and seconded.
Are
Please
we
call the
going
roll.
3 rounds?
No, there are 2 rounds for everything on our agenda. Please call the roll.
Alderman Yonda,
Absolutely.
Alderman Barziza,
Abstain.
Vice Mayor Gibson,
Yes.
Alderman Massey,
No.
Alderman Owens.
Yes.
Measure carries. That brings us to item number 12 on the agenda this evening. Approval of warrant, Care 4 at the Gateway, Plan Development, Civic Space. Mr. Ross.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the board. The warrant for this item, I think we've discussed it at length at this point. The warrant is for approximately 15,000 square feet, just short of 16,000 square feet of civic space that will be developed, managed, and maintained by Care 4 at the Gateway. Part of the request under the SMART code is that any warrant has to be approved by both the Planning Commission as well as the Board of Mayor and Aldermen. Their request does fall under 23-758 for civic space being granted in any SMART code district. Again, approval of this warrant will allow the developers to move forward with their plan It's one less warrant for them to apply for, since it does integrate with each of the phases. So they went forward with this warrant as part of this initial outline plan application. Approval of this warrant will not really affect staff time until subsequent phases of preliminary and final plan development start to come in. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Ross. Is there a motion to approve warrant number 1, to approve a warrant from section 23-758 to allow 15,758 square feet of programmed civic space in the center of the development?
So moved.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Did you want to make a presentation, or are you just prepared to answer any remarks?
I'm just prepared to answer any
thank you.
remarks.
Any questions for staff on this particular item or the applicant? Alderman Massey?
Mayor, someone could explain why this is necessary, just because we're getting questions, so.
Would you like to just reiterate what you just mentioned a moment ago, Mr. Ross?
Why which part is necessary, Mr. Massey?
Well, I keep getting questions from residents who say, I'm reading what is written here, but I don't understand exactly why this is necessary. So the questions to me generally are, and you just do a better job explaining it, is all I'm asking. I'm not questioning what you're doing. I'm just asking you to explain it to the public.
Go ahead, Mr. Ross.
Go ahead.
So for any warrant under 745, it's a special request. In most cases, it's a design deviation. In this case, it is a design deviation because not every development is going to have a civic space associated with it. And in the case of civic spaces, a separate warrant is requested because a civic space, in most cases with these centers of activity, is going to be managed, programmed, and maintained by the developer. So asking for that civic space as a special request is making sure that everyone understands their responsibility and that it does not fall under the operation and maintenance of the city going forward as part of this development. So it is a request in that regard, and that's the reason that the ordinance requires it to be a warrant.
So the other question that follows is usually, well, I thought every smart growth development was required to have a designated civic space. So can you address that as well?
I believe that there is no requirement for civic space. That's why it's a warrant application. It's encouraged. Little pocket parks are included. They're not counted as civic space. That's just streetscaping. Civic space is more for these large greens or the smaller green that you see in Thornwood. You'll note that Trevere did not have any civic space. They just have privately maintained little parklets, private parks, gathering spaces. They are open to the public, but they're not programmed. They are maintained and managed. But again, civic space goes more towards the programmatic or the gathering or some sort of other operational issue.
Any other questions? Any other questions for staff? Alderman Owens.
Again, just a comment, and I've brought this up before. I wish we could take a look at our smart growth code and particularly that provision, either strike or modify, because certainly what we are trying to encourage in smart growth, that has always been my belief at least, is usable green open spaces that can be used by the residents, that can be enjoyed by those who are shopping, using the offices. I think this civic space is no exception. It'll be vibrant. It'll be important. An ice skating rink. I love that. Possible Friday night movies, gathering spaces for our residents. That's the crux and part of a huge part of it, at least in my opinion, of this type of mixed-use development that we're trying to get. And it's good site planning. And for that reason, I'll be voting for this warrant.
Thank you. Any other questions for staff? Please call the roll.
Alderman Barziza?
I abstain, but I'm abstaining because I'm not convinced in regards to the office space as to the future use, even though this item 11 was just an outline plan. And so I will be abstaining on item 12.
Vice Mayor Gibson?
Yes.
Alderman Massey?
I think the civic space is a good idea.
Point of
They-
order. Yes,
Well,
no, or abstain?
I think on a warrant, I have to explain why I'm voting for it.
Is that correct?
That'll be fine, yes.
Thank you.
You okay with that, Mary Ann?
You have the floor, sir, and she's vice mayor. Go ahead.
So I think that the civic space is important. I like the green areas in our city. And so while I voted against the outline plan itself, it passed. Therefore, I am going to be voting in favor of something that creates a greener environment for the city. So I will be voting yes.
Alderman Owens,
Yes.
Alderman Yonda.
Yes.
Motion carries on the warrant, and we look forward to the project moving forward. I would just make note that having 30 or so testimonial letters is pretty outstanding in these times. So congratulations. We look forward to this project moving forward. Item 13 on the agenda this evening, contract chlorine tank replacement, Southern Avenue. Mr. Mills.
Thank you, Mayor. Mayor and Board, I have a ruptured tank at the Southern Avenue Water Treatment Plant, and I need to get it fixed. So during our planned renovation of the Southern Avenue Water Treatment Plant back in FY13, we changed from gaseous chlorine to a liquefied chlorine. It's sodium hypochlorite, and it is a disinfectant for our water that we insert in that helps the water stay pure. This liquid chlorine was stored in a 2,500-gallon fiberglass tank that was actually inside the building down near the loading dock area. This tank, Mayor and Board, has been problematic from the very beginning. We had some repairs made to it under warranty, and then since that time, it has given us trouble even more. But on October the 3rd, the tank developed a major leak that is not repairable. We were able to capture all the product and recirculate it and reuse it, and what we didn't collect, we were able to manage and clean up. But after the cleanup and the rupture, we got with our suppliers, and we've been using small tote tanks to operate the plant since that point in time. To address this unplanned emergency failure, we hired Allen and Hoschel, Mr. Ben Pearson and his group to come in and study our options and also to do some design work for us to build a redundant tank system to give us the opportunity to avoid this failure in the future. So this project before you tonight will provide resiliency into the process. We are going to actually install multiple double-walled high-density polyethylene tanks with simple system of pumps to move the product into the treatment system process and provide redundancy in the event of a catastrophic failure. In total, this project includes the demolition of the failed system, refurbishment of the room as it is housed, and the installation of a new chemical feed system to feed the product. So Mayor and Board, using Allen and Hoschel's design, we bid this work out. We took the time to do so, receiving 3 qualified bids. Chris Hill Construction is our lowest qualified bidder for this work. They've done several projects for me in Public Works, rebuilt a couple of lift stations for me, top-class company. As it indicated, and as Mr. Lawton said earlier, this is an emergency situation, so we do not have funding for this $353,075 project, but it will come at the end of the year. We'll do a year-end budget adjustment and move the money from reserves into the account. So staff recommends approval of this contract. I have my assistant Andy Sanders with me, who has served as project manager and developer of this, and also Mr. Ben Pearson is here with us from Allen and Hoschel, and we're able to answer questions.
Thank you, Mr. Mills. Is there a motion? Is there a motion to allow the mayor to request authorization to enter in a contract with Chris Hill Construction LLC to refurbish the existing chlorine room and replace the chlorine chemical feed system at the Southern Avenue Water Treatment Plant in the amount of $353,075?
Move to approve.
Second. So motion by Alderman Barzizza, seconded by Vice Mayor Gibson. Any discussion? Please call the roll.
Vice Mayor Gibson?
Yes.
Alderman Massey?
Yes.
Alderman Owens?
Yes.
Alderman Yonda?
Yes.
Alderman Barzizza?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you.
Go fix it, Bo.
Thank you.
Thank you. Item 14 on the agenda is contract extension, third-party administrative services. Mr. Walensky.
Mayor and Board, the purpose of this agenda item is to request your consideration and approval of a 12-month contract extension with Health Cost Solutions, Inc., referred to as HCS, to serve as the city's health insurance third-party administrator, referred to going forward as TPA. The City of Germantown provides a self-insured employee medical and dental benefit plan with cost containment features and a prescription drug program. The city provides health care benefits to participating employees, retirees, and their dependents. The city has 400 full-time employees, 110-plus retirees, and approximately 1,000 participating covered lives in the current health plan. Public safety and public works represent 60% of that total full-time workforce number, and our first responders in police and fire are averaging about 24 to 26 years in tenure, public works staff about 18 years. Our average city employee is 47 years of age. The city actively promotes health and wellness as part of our Healthy Germantown for Employees initiative with free employee physicals, flu shots, screenings, Germantown Athletic Club memberships, nutrition workshops, and more, all contributing to a healthier workforce now and hopefully throughout their lives as well as the lives of their loved ones. HCS is the current third-party administrator, and they're responsible for claims processing, pharmacy benefit management, and network access. Through this contract, the city's eligible employees, dependents, and retirees are able to access the Cigna network of healthcare providers. The plan cost on a per-employee per month basis decreased by 5.5% from 2017 to 2018. This agenda item supports the Germantown Forward 2030 City Services and Finance Strategic Objective, which states the city provides high-quality services. The importance of a quality, affordable health plan for employees is vital to the retention and recruitment of the very talented team of professional men and women who comprise our workforce. The board approved a 36-month contract with HCS in December of 2015, beginning January 1, 2016, and ending on December 31, 2018. This contract may also be extended by the city for 2 additional 12-month periods at the city's option. Staff tonight recommends the approval of a 12-month option for third-party administrative services with Health Cost Solutions for the period of January 1 to December 31, 2019, and welcomes any questions you may have.
Thank you, Mr. Walensky. Is there a motion to authorize the mayor to enter into a 12-month extension option effective January 1 through December 31st, 2019, with Health Cost Solutions, Inc., in the amount of $166,656 to continue as the city's third-party administrator, pharmacy benefits provider, and network access provider?
Move to approve.
Is a motion?
Second.
It's a motion and a second. I'd be remiss if I didn't recognize our Personnel Advisory Commission Chairperson, Claire Shapiro, is here tonight and has been here for the entire meeting and serves on the commission that oversees the next 3 items, I believe. Any questions for staff? Please call the roll.
Alderman Massey?
Yes.
Alderman Owens?
Yes.
Alderman Yonda?
Yes.
Alderman Barzizza?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Gibson?
Yes.
Motion carries. It takes us to item 15 on the agenda, renewal of medical and pharmacy stop insurance. Mr. Walensky.
Mayor and Board, thank you again for the opportunity to make this presentation. The purpose of this agenda item is to consider approval of a new policy for the City of Germantown stop-loss insurance for calendar year 2019. Medical and RX or pharmacy stop-loss insurance protects employers from assuming all the liability for losses that result from an unexpected amount of claims, either from an individual or an entire workforce. If expenses go above this limit, the stop-loss carrier will assume the liability. The city has used the services of a stop-loss carrier for over 20 years. The stop-loss carrier works as a safety net to protect the city's self-insured plan. For example, if an individual claim exceeds $115,000, this insurance will reimburse the city 100% of the paid eligible claims that exceed that specific deductible amount. So we currently have a $115,000 individual stop-loss deductible with an annual premium of $614,281 with American Fidelity Insurance Company. Our experience over the last several years has allowed these rates to remain stable. After a thorough analysis of the city's medical plan activity this past year and review by staff and the city's consultant, ESP LLC, it's the recommendation of staff that the city continue its coverage with American Fidelity. Their overall coverage remains the same, as does the deductible, and they continue to have an A+ rating. The recommendation for this year includes a specific stop-loss rate adjustment from $614,281 to $655,317. The maximum aggregate funding factors did not change. Given our low employee turnover, and which I referenced earlier, and our gradual increase in covered retirees and dependents, along with an overall increase nationally, which has become well-known in healthcare spending, especially for medical care and pharmaceutical use, we believe this is a reasonable adjustment. This agenda item supports the Germantown Forward 2030 City Services and Finance Strategic Objective, which states the city provides high-quality services, takes pride in its technically competent workforce, and is dedicated to serving customers. I want to thank our procurement director, Ms. Lisa Piefer, and our consultants, here to my left, Mr. Bob Shoup and Ms. Brittany Spradling, for their assistance throughout the annual review process and with this summary presentation tonight on stop-loss insurance coverage for the city's health plan. Mr. Shoup and Ms. Spradling are here, as I mentioned, and they're also available to answer questions about the recommendation before you.
Thank you, Mr. Walensky. Is there a motion to authorize the mayor and board to enter into a renewal policy with American Fidelity in the amount of $655,317 for stop-loss insurance coverage in 2019?
Move to approve.
Is a motion?
Second.
Is a motion and a second. Any questions for staff?
Mr. Walensky, would you like to explain to the public what the maximum plan cost could be?
I think I'm going to refer to our consultants. I will say we've come absolutely nowhere close, as you know, to that
Yeah, I know.
maximum plan cost. I believe it's in the neighborhood, actually, I could probably tell you, it is I think, I have it. 6, right here. The big one?
That includes fixed cost.
Oh, including everything.
All-in cost. I think that's what you're asking, sir.
The 7.
Is that it? 7,063,827?
Yep, that's it. I just wanted to go on record. Do you want to explain briefly how that works?
Sure. Mayor, Alderman, thank you for this opportunity. Oh, sorry.
Just get a little bit closer to it.
How's that?
That's perfect.
That's good. Okay. Your plan is made up of two components. One is we refer to as fixed cost. Included in that is the services of HCS you just approved, their fee. Also included in fixed cost are 2 reinsurance premiums or stop-loss premiums. One is the one that you're voting on, which is specific stop-loss that covers anything above $115,000, and that's unlimited. It could be $2 million. It doesn't matter. Your exposure is $115,000. When all of the claims under $115,000 reaches a point at the end of the year, if those claims collectively or aggregately exceed that number, you are also reimbursed on all of that. The effect of that is to make this a budgetable item. It is not open-ended, so it's not unfunded. So you draw a box. That number is, and I believe you have this worksheet, that aggregate number, let me find it real quick, is $6,408,510. That is called the maximum aggregate funding factor. So if all your claims under $115,000 reach that number, everything over that, up to $1 million, is reimbursed to the city. So 2 possible reimbursement points.
There is also a number on this sheet that is called expected claims funding factor. That number is $5,126,808. That number is calculated actuarially by the stop-loss carrier based on your previous claims experience and their analysis of private health information, which is not available to us, to determine ongoing claims, possible diagnosis, prognosis, what are those claims going to look like in the following year. So based on all of those factors, they come up with what they expect the claims to be. Now, it's important to note that if you were fully insured, in other words, you pay a premium, they pay the claims, you're not self-funded, the insurance company is going to do this same thing. They're to protect themselves. So that's how they come up with their rate. So what you're doing here as a self-funded entity is to follow those same actuarial principles. So they expect your claims to be $5,126,000, but they're saying if, for whatever reason, they reach $6,004,000, that's where your liability stops. Now, to answer your question, I'm sorry I had to go around the barn, but to answer your question, this $7 million figure, and this is important to note, the $7 million figure includes the $6,408,000 fully aggregate coverage and the fixed cost, total plan fixed cost at the bottom of $655,317. All of those numbers added together is where we come up with the $7 million all-in cost, meaning that if the city had the worst possible, I'm talking about a really epidemic, and you had all these claims, the most the city would spend is $7,063,000. Did a little calculating in the car on the way down here. I'm not going to read this. I need a number off of here. Pardon? No, yes. No, I wasn't. My associate was driving. I was curious to look back to 2014 forward to today. And if looking at these two numbers, the maximum amount that it could cost you and what you actually paid, not this $5 million number, but what did you actually pay in claims? That's an important number because since 2014, it's important for the city to note that there has been a savings of approximately $3,800,000 that you did. That's how far below that fully aggregated number was over collectively. That means the plan has been managed very well, and our discounts have been where they should be. The wellness programs have kicked in, and all of that is fighting against another statistic that Mr. Solinsky mentioned, and that is your average age. This is not a derogatory statement, it's just a statement of fact. Public entities have low turnover. That means every year your population ages if you're not bringing in a large amount of younger folks. And all of these folks, like me, are approaching a period in their life where there's a propensity to have larger claims. So the stop-loss carrier has got to take all of that into consideration in coming up with what do we charge to protect our risk, not knowing what's going to happen next year. So all that's important. I would like to add one other number to this calculation of $3,008,000. If you will look back at statistics, this same premium in 2013 cost you $1,200,000. So effectively, since 2014, in addition to being $3,008,000 under the cap, the city has saved roughly $500,000 to $600,000 a year since 2014 in a lowered premium because of the way this plan has been structured and run. This is a phenomenal success story. I just wanted to point that out. So that's a really long answer to your question, Mr. Massey, but I wanted to be thorough.
That was good. that was good. Do you want to talk briefly about what those changes were that resulted in the savings? I think there were some plans to the Cigna administration of the plan, if I remember correctly. If I'm not correct, then you just tell me that I'm not correct. And I think that some of our larger claims fell off, but I'd love to hear it from you, what resulted in these kind of savings.
Well, the initial savings from 2013 to 2014, when we were brought in to analyze this program, and I'm going to ask staff to keep me on the right road here. There are several elements to your program. There is a reinsurance that we're talking about tonight. There's an administrative element. There is a network element, and I'm missing the fourth one.
The bidding element. The bidding element. In 2013 and 14, the laws for insurance and purchasing insurance changed. It went from a broker format to actually cities could go out and actually bid that themselves, which is what we did. And when he referred to the amount of savings that we had, we went from $1,062,000, give or take some change, to 500 something thousand. And we saved $500,000 just going from a broker type format to a bidding format. And then we have bid every year since that form. This time, we actually did a renewal process in there, which kind of held that person to we added it into the stop loss information last year in our procurement, which kind of held that person to some of the premiums that they had, which helped us maintain this lower amount. So that was a big portion to start those savings, and then,
yes.
Yeah.
And the final element was when we analyzed the program, all of those various elements of your self-funded program were due on a different date.
Right.
You constantly had something coming due, and there was no way to get your arms around it. So we recommended picking one of those effective dates and running everything else short term to get it all on the same date. And the obvious one to use was stop loss. Changing your stop loss date is very complicated and can be catastrophically expensive. So we recommended that's how you wound up with a January 1 date, because at the time in 2013, that was the effective date of your stop loss. So we brought it all up together into one structure to where you get your arms around it, we could manage the program, and you folks have done a wonderful job doing that.
Didn't Cigna play a role in that? We changed something about the management to Cigna, I think, as the provider. We were previously.
You want to?
Well, it wasn't that we changed something, except that we changed the network that we were using. In the bid process that we sent out, we did a study, cost analysis study, to determine which one of these networks could actually give you the best discounts.
Right.
And the determination of that put us with this Cigna. Now, yeah, the open access, there's 2 or 3 different programs, but that's the one we moved you to at that point. And those discounts helped us to hold down the claims because it costs less if we get a better discount, obviously.
Okay, that's a great explanation. I appreciate you doing that.
Sure.
Helped me. I get those questions, and it's better if you answer them. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Any other questions for staff on this particular item? Please call the roll.
Alderman Owens,
Yes.
Alderman Yonda.
Yes.
Alderman Barzizza.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Gibson.
Yes.
Alderman Massey.
Yes.
The motion carries, and just as a footnote, applaud Alderman Yonda and at that time Alderman Palazzolo for moving us to a bid process and saving all that money in 2012 and 13. Item 16 on the agenda this evening, renewal of property and casualty insurance. Ms. Pieper.
Thank you all. Usually I'm the last one on the agenda. It's kind of nice not to be the last one this time. I appreciate the opportunity to present the property and casualty insurance renewal, which is one of the most important items, I think, for the city, because I'm the risk manager for the city. It meets the city services and the Germantown Forward 2030 goal of providing high-quality services and city services used effectively in high-priority areas. These policies help us in mitigating and limiting and reduce the risk of loss in our city. It's one of the most important things we do. We instigate or try to initiate an area of not a gotcha mentality. It's a health and a
Frustration since 2012, and I held the same frustration. I said, well, no one's ever talked to me as an alderman about this project. You were the first one that let me know that the project was underway or very close to being underway.
Prevention mentality. That we want to go in and make sure that people and all of our employees are protected when they're on a piece of equipment, when they're driving our cars, when they're working in our areas, and when something does unfortunately happen, and it may be our fault. So we try to do that in the most prudent and financial manner that we can. Just a little background on this. The city has been a member of the Public Entity Partners, which I'm probably going to mess up because it is formerly TML, for several, I believe it's almost 3 decades. This was created for us to do this through TCA 292401, which allows us to have a captive group type insurance, which helps us lower the volume of cost. The Public Entity Partners has 497 members. They earn premiums of over $58,500,000, and they actually give us dividends of $5 million for the upcoming year. So you'll see that in some of the information that I provided with you. The policy cost and period for this year, the policy runs from 12/1/18 through 12/1/19, almost on the calendar year. And the overall premium totals for this budget is $1,024,431. It's under $44,657 under the FY19 budget for us. I feel very fortunate to have a staff to help me, but also Insight Risk Management, David McDonald, to assist in trying to help us develop that budget. You have to develop a budget a year out, but then you're doing the renewal in the middle of the year, so it's sometimes difficult to do that. The overall actual dollar amounts for the property coverage is $193,745. Workers' comp, $491,533, and the liability coverage is $339,153. I will say that we do have a broker commission for this. This has been set up for as long as I have been doing this, but previous to that has been done since inception. Public Entity Partners employs Insight Risk Management to do that for us. The cost of that is $58,892, which is incorporated into the policies themselves. I will say that the commission is one thing, but the valuable information that Mr. McDonald provides us is a key to assist us in making sure that we keep our premiums down and we keep our claims down. Just to give you a little bit of a taste of the information that he provides for us, review and creation of waivers. You wouldn't believe about the amount of waivers we do for the city, for the Parks and Rec Department, to be honest with you, and some of the force. Contract language for development contracts, our regular contracts that we have. We look over those things and save cost in our legal cost. We utilize some of their software free of charge from them. We also have internal staff training for us on how to look at new things that happen in risk. CAN presentation, they look at our certificates of insurance for review to make sure that we have enough insurance on our vendors. We have 12 different types of requirements which they assist us with, and to be honest with you, we come up with something new every day, and they are there to help us and assist us in figuring out what kind of insurance we should have for that. So that portion of that is like having another department within the city to assist us with that, and I can't thank Mr. McDonald enough for that. Mr. McDonald will be available for questions, but I'm going to go over just a little bit of the information on each one of the items. It's in your packets. All of the information from the policy, it's in your packets, but just a little general information on what we talked about on the property. The insured value of the covered property for the city is $178.4 million. The total insurance values under the renewal policy went up about 2.5%. again, when you have property, you update it, you buy new fire trucks, you buy all these things, those things go, our infrastructure goes up, so the policy does go up. We also made a decision, I believe it was 3 years ago, to raise our deductible for property up to $50,000 because our past history had said we don't need that kind of deductible. History has come around, and we actually need to lower that to $25,000 because we've had some issues and some incidents between $25,000 and $50,000 that we really need to make sure that our insurance person is taking care of that. We will continue to look at those different kinds of things to get the best bang for buck. It was a nominal increase in our property amount, so we felt like it was a very good decision. Liability was 3.5% higher due to values and assets. You buy more stuff, you have more people, you have more property, then you have more liability. It's as simple as that. Workers' compensation is based on the payroll that we have. If we increase the number of employees that we have, which we have in the past year, actually 18 months. Remember I said it was a calendar year, but when we put something in a physical year, we don't always get those done at the same time at the start of a physical year. So it's usually about an 18-month to 24-month process when you add firefighters, police, and so forth, and we have done that over the last 2 years and added additional staffing. And when you do that, you finally get to the point where you get everybody on there. And we are to that point where we've got a full year of all the new employees that we put on there. So it has increased somewhat. Plus, we do provide raises for our employees, which is 3% typically. So that has gone up. Overall, the added information on the workers' comp. I want to say that we do a tremendous job, and Steve Walensky and his staff actually handle that for us, and they look at the information that happens. And I won't get into too much because we can't, but our workers' comp, our employees take an initiative to make sure they don't try to get hurt. It's not that gotcha mentality. If they do get hurt and there's something going on, we try to help them get past that and not do it again. And so we have a central safety committee that meets, and it's rank and file. It is not supervisors, it's rank and file. And they meet monthly, and we go through those things to see if there are different areas that we can improve. And that goes into this process as well. We're about educating and mitigating. And so far, overall, this concludes my presentation tonight. I respectfully request approval of this item, and I'm available for questions as well as Mr. McDonald.
Thank you, Ms. Pfeiffer. We appreciate that extensive presentation. Is there a motion to approve the renewal of insurance coverage and payment of premiums, less the related dividends, per the attached renewal information from public entity partners for property, workers' compensation, and general liability policies?
Move to approve.
Is a motion?
Second.
Is a motion and a second. Any questions for staff? Please call the roll.
Alderman Yonda,
Yes.
Alderman Barzizza,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Gibson,
Yes.
Alderman Massey,
Yes.
Alderman Owens.
Yes.
Motion carries. That brings us to item 17 on the agenda, change order number 1, city signs. This was item 10B on the consent agenda. Mr. Douglas.
Good evening, Mayor and Board. I will be brief in the next 4 presentations. As mentioned earlier, they were on the consent agenda, and each one of these items do meet our Germantown Forward 2030 strategic objective 2 within city services and finance that states the city of Germantown is responsible for significant physical assets. City signs. This agenda before you is to increase the construction amount with A&B Construction for $1,126.80 from $144,000, increasing the amount from $144,840 to $145,966.80. As part of your packet, you can see what the change orders are in detail. I won't go over those unless I just really need to. The board did approve the original construction project on July 23rd in the amount of $144,480. I'm available for questions if y'all have any.
Thank you, Mr. Douglas. Is there a motion to approve change of the contract amount for city signs, change order number 1, increasing the contract amount with A and B Construction Company by $1,126.80 from $144,840 to $145,966.80.
Move to approve.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Questions for staff?
Mr. Douglas, I'll be brief. There's 3 items that deal with the soil problems. Do you have any explanation for why all of these change orders are related to problems that we've had with soil at this time?
For this particular item?
Well, for all 3 items. I think we have 3 or 4 that are the change order, the increase cited, or the reason for the increase cited was something to do with soil.
Correct. At each location, it was a little different, but again, the soils were not suitable for construction. For the city signs where existing irrigation was in place, that soil was unsuitable. At the GPAC Grove project, that soil was unsuitable due to construction that was completed to finish out GPAC in 1994. At the Cameron Brown Greenway Storage Facility, that's bottomland. That ground was unsuitable for construction.
I think maybe, Mayor, going forward, if we could get a letter from the contractor just stating what the reason is for the change orders, and there may be some may have them, some may not, but I'm just saying going forward, maybe we can get that and read that into the record, just so because people are asking me, why are we continuing to have so many change orders? And I don't necessarily think anything's amiss, but at the same time, I think we owe it to the public once we approve a project, if we come back with a change order at a later date, to offer them an explanation. So that's sometimes why I like to have them in the regular agenda rather than in the consent, just so we can offer the explanation.
Mayor, that information that Alderman Massey's requested is attached to your agenda sheet. A letter from the engineer describing what they found at the site, and by ATEC engineers describing what the soil conditions were, what they found, what they discovered, and why the need to replace those unsuitable soils.
Thank you, Mr. Lawton. Any other questions for staff?
Well, I guess I'm looking just for a little bit more explanation, because apparently this doesn't provide enough information to some of the residents, because we do get those questions, and I can tell them to read these letters, but if we don't, if I don't necessarily understand it, I don't think the people that are reading what we include necessarily understand it, so just...
Well, it says soft, wet, and unsuitable. That's pretty straightforward. But we'll be glad to include anything in the packet like we already have.
Well, soft, wet, and unsuitable, I mean, was it not soft, wet, and unsuitable when they did the bids? I mean, that's the question that I'm getting, I guess. And the other thing that I'd like to have included is maybe the bid specifications. You know, why weren't the soil samples done on the front end? Did some contractors do the soil samples while others didn't? And maybe there was a difference in the cost associated with those bids. Is somebody on staff not catching that difference in the bid specifications, and then someone's coming back with a change order that suddenly increases that cost that may have been contemplated by one contractor but not another? So those are just some of the things.
Sure.
I'm not...
Well, staff is available anytime you want to meet with them, call, discuss, or go on site. So.
Well, it's difficult when we get the package and we're out of town for Thanksgiving, Mayor. We come in. I mean, you know, it's a holiday week for one thing.
Well,
so.
not every board meeting's on a holiday weekend. So
Let's just make it easy for the aldermen and provide the
Alderman,
information.
Massey, on small projects, we do not do boring samples to hold costs down as best we can. These are small projects, so we didn't do boring samples. But on larger projects, we do boring samples, so we can include that as part of the bid packet.
It just, maybe when we get these, just include the bid specs.
Any other questions for staff? Please call the roll.
Alderman Barzizza?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Gibson?
Yes.
Alderman Massey?
Yes.
Alderman Owens?
Yes.
Alderman Yonda?
Yes.
Measure passes. That brings us to item 18 on the agenda, which is item C from the consent agenda. Change order number 1, GPAC Grove Fire Truck Turnaround and Closeout.
Thank you, Mayor. The purpose of this agenda is to increase the contract amount with Barnes & Brower by $11,794 from the contract amount that was approved August 13th, 2018, of $69,277 to $81,071. Again, the information as far as it relates to the unsuitable soil conditions is included in your packet. It does meet our Germantown Forward 2030 as stated earlier. I'm available for questions.
Thank you, Mr. Douglas. Is there a motion to approve change of the contract amount for GPAC Grove Fire Truck Turnaround Project, change order number 1, increasing the contract amount by $11,794 from $69,277 to $81,071? Is there a motion?
Move to approve.
It's a motion. Motion and a second. Any questions for staff? Please call the roll.
Mayor, just say that at request the same thing. I see
Sure.
that there's a letter here, but there's just not a lot of detail about why the contractor felt the soil was unsafe. And again, the bid specifications might help. It sounds like they just hand probed the area and were able to determine that it was excessively soft soil. And so the resident that asked me said, well, why didn't they find this on the front end? And so I think that's, I'm not, Reynolds,
Your point has been made and stated very well.
But I want Mr. Douglas to understand that I'm not coming to you with these questions for my own well-being. I get these from other residents who ask me, why are y'all doing these things? And so that's why I come to you. It's just easier if we answer these questions in the meetings like this. So I just want you to understand
Sure,
that.
thank you. Alderman Yonda, did you want the floor?
Yeah, tell me the borings that would be necessary to get a correct quote. How expensive are they?
Well, it depends actually on how many bores you're going to do, but it's a minimum starting at $1,000. So
Per bore?
Yeah.
Right. Thank you.
Any other questions for staff?
Well, Mayor, I'd just like to point out that this letter says that they just did a hand probe, so I don't think a boring would have necessarily been required for this one, but thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, I believe Alderman Yonda was just asking about borings in general. Go ahead, continue with roll call, please.
Vice Mayor Gibson,
Yes.
Alderman Massey,
Yes.
Alderman Owens,
Yes.
Alderman Yonda.
Yes?
Alderman Barzizza.
Yes.
Brings us to item number 19 on the agenda, formerly consent item D. Change order number 1, Greenway Storage, Cameron Brown Park. Mr. Douglas.
thank you, Mayor. This agenda item is to increase the contract amount with Grinder Tabor Grinder, Inc. by $6,244 from a previously approved contract amount of $49,565 to the amount of $55,809. Again, in your packet describes the unsuitable soil conditions. This item will also require a budget adjustment, budget adjustment 19-26, and it does meet our Germantown 2030. I'm available for questions.
Thank you. Is there a motion to approve change of the construction contract amount for Greenway Storage Building, change order number 1, increasing the contract amount with Grinder, Tabor, and Grinder Incorporated by $6,244 from $49,565 to $55,809, and approve budget adjustment 19-26?
Move to approve.
There's a motion?
Second?
There's a motion and a second. Any questions for staff? Please call the roll.
Alderman Massey,
Yes.
Alderman Owens,
Yes.
Alderman Yonda.
Yes?
Alderman Barzizza.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Gibson.
Yes.
Motion carries. That brings us to item 20 on the agenda, formerly 10E, change orders, City Hall elevator replacement. Mr. Douglas.
Thank you, Mayor. This item is to increase the contract amount with Grinder Tabor Grinder, Inc. by $9,735.56 from the previously approved contract amount of $282,512 to $292,247. Excuse me. This was previously approved July 23rd, 2018. It does meet our Germantown Forward 2030. As I mentioned earlier, the itemized unforeseen items are in your packet. It's kind of like any construction job when you're doing renovations. You may run into things that are just simply unforeseen, things that have to be brought up to code that could not be quantified during the bid process. I'm available for questions.
Thank you, Mr. Douglas. Is there a motion to approve change of the construction contract for the City Hall elevator replacement change orders, increasing the contract amount by $9,735.56 from $282,512 to $292,247.56?
Move to approve.
It's a motion?
Second?
It's a motion and a second. Questions for staff? Please call the roll.
Alderman Owens,
Yes.
Alderman Yonda,
Yes.
Alderman Barzizza,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Gibson.
Yes.
Alderman Massey.
Yes.
Motion carries. That brings us to item 21 on the agenda this evening, which was formerly 10F, competitive seal proposal authorization for investment services. Mr. Gabb.
Thank you, Mayor. Alderman, the purpose of the agenda item is to authorize the city to use the competitive seal proposal process for investment services. This process will allow the city the ability to determine the best course of action for investing a portion of its reserved funds. The amount of reserved funds invested in financial institution will be determined by reviewing the yearly budget, the financial policies, and the cash needs. The request for proposal is to ensure that the city receives the optimum level of investment services at a competitive price, and the city's expectation upon completion of the process for proposal is to enter into a contract for investment purposes if appropriate. The financial institution selection will provide their experience of providing similar services, expertise of investment management professionals, client service and client management philosophies and fee structures. Investment guidelines will follow the Tennessee Code annotated 6-56-106. The financial policies require that the city to hold 1/3 of its next year's taxes in reserve, next year's debt services, $900,000 for emergencies and catastrophes, and contingencies of $50,000 in next year's infrastructure replacement. The city currently uses the Tennessee Local Government Investment Pool, which earns approximately 2.1%. In addition, it has $5 million invested in home loans through an investment vehicle, earning about 3% is the last one we have. This will give us a diversification of funds, not only in the Tennessee LGIP or Local Government Investment Pool, but an outside investment tool as well. I or Mr. Lawton will be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you, Mr. Gabb. Is there a motion to authorize the city to use the competitive sealed proposal process for procuring investment services?
Move to approve.
Second.
So motion and a second. Questions for staff? Alderman Massey.
So, Ralph, you mentioned diversification. What are we diversifying here?
Well, currently, Alderman, we are in the Tennessee LGIP.
Right.
We also have funds outside of that, and currently we're in the federal home loan, but there may be other investment vehicles earning perhaps a better rate of return for the citizens as we keep a certain amount of reserves, and we wouldn't want to put everything in the LGIP. We would want to be outside of that as well, so that we look at diversification in that way, sir.
How long have we had it with the LGIP?
It was an LGIP when I was working for the city about 26 years ago, sir.
So what prompted and who was prompted, I guess, in the administration to make the decision? And I'm not against the bidding out. I just want to know the background of why we're doing this and who made the decision.
I can answer that question. That's something we've talked about for a number of years. And the only way, and we've been approached by different financial institutions who were interested in what the city was doing. We're very comfortable with the LGIP. At the end of the day, we may not change from what we're doing with the LGIP. This just gives us the opportunity to look at what other financial institutions might be able to offer us. Again, it's trying to maximize what we have. So yes, it did come from the administration. Everything that, no matter what we do and what we bring back, this is just to take a look-see at what's out there and who might be able to provide us with the services we're looking for. Any recommendation regarding an institution that we would work with would obviously come back to this body for final approval. And everything that we would be doing with any of those firms, if we make a change, would be consistent with what the TCA allows.
And how much did you say this LGIP manages for us? Did you give me that number?
Currently, the LGIP manages $48 million for the city.
And Mr. Lawton, I think you said earlier, we don't know who's going to be on the city's team that reviews this right now.
Well, that'll be an internal decision. I will make that decision who serves on it, but myself and Mr. Gabb, but again, I will make that decision.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for staff on this item? Please call the roll.
Alderman Yonda.
Yes.
Alderman Barzizza.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Gibson.
Yes.
Alderman Massey.
Yes.
Alderman Owens.
Yes.
Thank you, Board.
Thank you, Mr. Gabb. Measure carries. That brings us to item 22 on the agenda, formerly 10G, contract development or develop rebranding and implementation plan for the Germantown Athletic Club. Mr. Rogers.
Thank you, Mayor and Board. The purpose of this agenda item is to authorize the city to enter into a contract with Red Deluxe LLC in the amount of $37,125 for the purpose of branding, development, and design services for the Germantown Athletic Club. The Germantown Athletic Club has seen tremendous changes over the past decade since its initial change from the Germantown Center. With over $5 million invested of club-generated revenues back into the facility and more to come, the look and feel of the club has changed dramatically. A reinvestment into the brand identity is also needed as we hope to continue to add members, programs, programming spaces, as well as other profit centers such as a cafe this year. This project will interview current members, non-members, as well as staff in an effort to get a true understanding of what the club means to the community. With this knowledge and analysis of local and national competitors, we can put forth a uniform and seamless brand identity to now match our state-of-the-art facility. The new identity will be reflected on a new member marketing collateral, logo, strong interior wall graphics, signage throughout the facility, pro shop apparel, external signage, social media presence, internal informational pieces, and the new club cafe. This identity will be a part of who we are moving forward. This project was budgeted for in the FY19 budget and brought before the Athletic Club Commission. Commission members were in favor of the project, and a presentation will be made before the commission before any final design changes are, before any final designs are decided on and approved. After an extensive evaluation process and interviews with the top two firms, Red Deluxe LLC was chosen based upon their relevant health and fitness club experience, creative presentation, and technical requirements. Red Deluxe also does design work for Old Dominic's Distillery, the Memphis Zoo, and is in charge of the yearly campaign for the Memphis Grizzlies, just to name a few. This agenda supports Germantown Forward 2030 City Service and Finance Strategic Objective number 1, that all funds are self-sustaining. And I'm more than happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Rogers. Is there a motion to authorize the city to enter into a contract with Red Deluxe LLC in the amount of $37,125 for the purpose of branding development and design services for the Germantown Athletic Club?
So moved.
It's a motion.
Second.
It's a motion and a second. Any discussion? Alderman Massey.
Mr. Rogers and I serve on the Germantown Athletic Club Commission. Together, I talked to him earlier today. One question I forgot to ask you that was brought to my attention, it says that the proposal submittal deadline was November 26, 2018 at 2 o'clock, which would have been today. I think that's a typo, but I'm not sure.
I believe you're correct. He said that the deadline for submission was today. I believe that was October 26.
Yeah, I think it probably was too. I don't know if that impacts the vote tonight, but it does say that the deadline is November 26, 2018.
Okay.
So I guess the question that I've been asked the most is, what are we trying to accomplish with this $37,000? So, Mr. Rogers, if you could just explain, not necessarily to me, but to the people at home, what we're doing with this money, I would appreciate it.
So ultimately what we're trying to do is very much like what I said in the description. We are trying to update the identity of what the Germantown Athletic Club is and what it means to our community. Right now we have very scattered when it comes to some of the stuff that we do, both with our club apparel, with our logo, with the way that we brand and advertise, with our direct mail pieces, with our informational pieces. What we're looking for is brand identity, something that we've never had before. Germantown Athletic Club came into iteration from the Germantown Center in 2008. At that point in time, a logo, some colors were developed. We're looking for more than that. We're looking for, like I said, a brand identity. Someone, when you say the Germantown Athletic Club, you know what you're talking about. You can see that logo on a club apparel, whether it's in Kroger, or whether it's on the beach in Destin, or whether it's in the airport. You're going to know that you're a member of the Germantown Athletic Club and what that means. So we're looking for that brand identity, not only for us as in a competitive market, but also to try to be, again, continue to be one of the top health clubs in Memphis and the Mid-South.
I guess that would lead me to the next question, which is how does this benefit the club users and then the residents of Germantown? Because they want to know if we're going to use the fees, in this case, from the club to pay for this. What are they going to get back from it? What is your vision of what we're going to, what the people are going to get back when we spend this $37,000?
Well, ultimately, I mean, everything that we do is a reinvestment back in the facility. I mean, whether that's the last $5 million that we put into the facility, or whether it's this just $37,000, that we're still putting this back into the facility. This is still trying to build our membership better. It's still trying to put added dollars back into what we're doing here at the facility. Just because it's not brick and mortar doesn't mean it's not being reinvested back into the facility and moving the facility forward. You know, on another note, while we do have 60% of our residents, 60% of our membership being Germantown residents, a large portion, or 40%, is also non-residents, and that's, I think, a vital number to point to when it comes to that. This is Germantown Athletic Club funds, Germantown Athletic Club dollars that are being put forward, and again, it goes back to the reinvestment back into the facility, and trying to continue to make sure that we're staying ahead of the curve, staying ahead of our competitors, staying ahead of everybody that's coming in that wants to tread on our territory, and just, again, trying to be the best that we can be.
So I think you and I, when we were talking, the goal is to continue to attracting people to the club.
Absolutely.
We're looking at doing a new coffee bar, a new sports bar. And one of the things we talked about is these folks helping us brand that area.
Yes, sir.
Because you and I don't have that kind of knowledge, right?
No, sir. I mean, we run a health club, and I think we run it really well.
Right.
These people do branding and do it identity, and I think they do it really well.
Yeah.
And so what we're trying to do is partner with them so that we have the best of both worlds.
Yeah, we want to attract new members, and we want to attract people to buy our other products.
Yes, sir.
Is that a safe way to explain it?
Absolutely. That is absolutely one way to say it.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions for staff? Please call the roll.
Alderman Barzizza.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Gibson.
Yes.
Alderman Massey.
Yes.
Alderman Owens.
Yes.
Alderman Yonda.
Yes.
Mr. Rogers, the motion carries. We've reached the conclusion of our meeting. Just a quick announcement. We do have commission applications that are due by Friday, November 30th, for anyone who would want to serve on our 24 or so boards and commissions. I'd also like to thank our reserves tonight, Ed, Al, Eric, and George. Thank you for taking care of us this evening. We are adjourned.